Elizabeth is the sidekick, pet, comrade of Katsura, and is hilariously later revealed to actually be two different people. And so not only will I explain what the actual hell Elizabeth is, but also explain his character and what it represents in the story of Gintama. And so this is what we shall discuss today. If you find yourself entertained at any point during the video, then consider liking, subscribing and ringing that bell, as I cannot explain to you how much just a small action can do for this channel. And if you want to support this channel even further, then perhaps check out my Patreon. Anyway, on with the video. Okay, first let's just clear up exactly what Elizabeth is. As shown in his first appearance, Elizabeth appears to be some old dude, but this is actually not entirely correct, as he is actually Dragonia, the eldest prince of planet Okoku and the older brother of Baka Prince Hatter. Now why he chooses to be a pet, I don't know. It's possible he came to Earth as part of the Renho invasion fleet along with Eren Elizabeth, but it's not really confirmed when he showed up. However, he only serves as Elizabeth from Tuesday to Sunday, because on Monday he is subbed out for another Elizabeth, this being Eren Elizabeth. So yeah, if a Gintama episode happened to be taking place on a Monday, then it is Eren, not Dragonia, we see on screen. Now the reason that Elizabeth looks like a giant duck thing is because both Dragonia and Eren Elizabeth became Renho, some mercenary Amanto who wear duck costumes and are ruled over by Dark Vader. Well, technically it's actually Saki, but Dark Vader sounds cooler, so I'm going to call him Dark Vader. And why is this the case? Because, you know, Gintama. For Dragonia, he was converted into a Renho after he fell off a cliff during a battle and was just abducted by Renho for no reason. And for Eren Elizabeth, he was abducted and converted into a Renho spy. This then is the Elizabeth who was gifted by Sakamoto to Katsura after Sakamoto just kind of agreed to set up Renho spies on Earth to prepare for an invasion, because he thought that the Renhos wanted to be pets, because Gintama. So technically Monday only Eren Elizabeth was the original Elizabeth, and why Dragonia then stepped in and took the other 6 days of the week, I guess we can only guess. And then after the Renho arc, Eren Elizabeth becomes the leader of the Renho tribe and goes off into space, never to be seen again, leaving just Dragonia as our only Elizabeth for the rest of the story, I guess now working 7 days a week. Again, Gintama. So yeah, if you want to know what Elizabeth is, then Elizabeth is two Amantos, both of whom were abducted by the Renho and converted into Renho mercenaries. One works as Katsura's pet on a Monday, the other for Tuesday through to Sunday. Oh, and this second Elizabeth has a massive Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. Well, unless you count the fact that there might actually be two more Elizabeths, there is Russian Elizabeth and the director of the Gintama anime, Takamatsu Shinji, who occasionally is implied to also be under the duck costume. So yeah, I ain't even going to touch that. So now I did as the thumbnail and title said, we can get round to some nice classic character analysis. I'll start with Eren Elizabeth and then move on to Dragonia in a bit. So, Eren Elizabeth, as said before, was sent to Earth as a spy for the Renho invasion. This is where he becomes Katsura's pet. And well, over the course of the story, Eren Elizabeth learns to care for Katsura and humanity, becoming an Earthling in his own right, which puts him at odds with his mission and forces him to choose to either follow his orders or follow the values he learns on Earth. The Renho arc very much hinges on the idea of identity, of the idea of what it means to be part of a race, and we see two different answers to this question through our antagonist Dark Vader and our protagonist the Samurai. As Dark Vader says, the Renho have an identity, they wear white and don't speak, but this is just an identity he forced on the Renho, it's identity through oppression. They don't have a planet to call home, so plan to conquer Earth and then the universe. Again, Dark Vader wishes to find a home through oppression and conquest. And although we never find out much about Dark Vader, I think it's clear that he wants to find an identity and a home for his race, just that he goes about it in a very selfish and self-centered way. He believes identity and a home must be brought about through oppression and conquest, but as the arc shows, this is not the right way to lead your people and not the right way to find an identity. A leader shouldn't force their ideals on their men, they should instead bear the weight of these ideals for the sake of their men, something Eren Elizabeth shows later in the arc. The core conflict of this arc then is what is identity and what makes something your home. As Sakamoto says in this arc, a planet is just a rock, it is the people that make it a world. Dark Vader thought by conquering a planet he would finally bring a home for his people, but that was wrong. Their mothership was just as much a planet to his people as Earth would be, because the location itself didn't matter, instead it was, as Sakamoto said, the people. As long as he continued to oppress his people, Dark Vader would never forge a home for his people. His conquest would not bring salvation to his race, it would only satisfy his own greed. When the Renho forcibly turned humans into more Renho through the rain, they once more are showing this reliance on oppression. Dark Vader cares not for how his race expands, as long as it expands. The feelings of his people are not important to him, as he says his soldiers are just tools to him. This is why he was betrayed by his own men, the ones he sent to Earth, because those Renho for the first time experienced a true home. They grew to love Earth and its people because, as said, it is people that make both a planet and a home. Earth became their home, not the mothership, and this is a clear example of the fault in Darth Vader's rule. Their short stay on Earth filled with love and human connection showed them a real home. However, they were too scared to renounce their identity as the Renho and so were forced to invade their new home. The identity Darth Vader forced on the Renho was one of oppression in clear contrast to the freedom they felt on Earth. This is why at the end of the arc, the Renho all ditched their duck costumes and signs. They shed the identity placed on them by Darth Vader and forged a new one due to the experiences they had on Earth. Identity is something you choose, it's not something to be forced onto you. That's what the ending of the arc showcases. The Renho could have stayed on Earth, but instead they went to the stars to find a home of their own. But their connections to Earth will never fade, as the lessons they learnt on that world have now become a core part of their identities. Eren Elizabeth fought alongside Katsura as a freedom fighter to overthrow an unjust regime, and so he went to do the same for the Renho. The lesson he learnt as Elizabeth was the meaning of justice, of fighting for what's right even if it's easier to look away. Elizabeth left Katsura and left Earth so he wouldn't mix them up in his own pursuit of justice, and he rebelled on his own so his men wouldn't be involved. He tried to carry the whole burden himself because that's what he thought a leader should do. He didn't want to do what Darth Vader did and force his men to conform to his ideals. He didn't want to force an identity onto them. However, the difference between him and Darth Vader is that Eren Elizabeth never oppressed and didn't force anything on anybody. He let them choose to be who they wanted to be, to choose their identities and do what they wanted. He would fight alone because his allies weren't tools or soldiers to him. But there was still a lesson he had to learn. The connection is real power, and then fighting for what your friends believe in is just as important as fighting for what you believe in. Which is why when he faced Darth Vader alone, he was prepared to die alone. As he says himself, he no longer knows who he is, or has a planet to call home. He's content with just being Katsura's friend. His identity is just that, Katsura's friend, as you don't need a planet to stand on, your connections in your heart are just as much a home. And this here is when he finally realises the true lesson he learnt on Earth. As cheesy as this is, it's the power of friendship, that a home is where your friends are. Katsura was always watching his back and so saves him from dying at Darth Vader's hand. Because a leader doesn't have to carry everything on his shoulders, because like how a captain can't get anywhere without his ship, a leader can't do anything without his men. Eren Elizabeth became a true leader in all senses of the word, and it's due to his friend and his treasure, Katsura. Eren Elizabeth had always questioned his path in life, his identity. For a long time he thought that silence and duck costumes were his identity, because that is what was forced on him. But through his time on Earth and meeting Katsura, he understood your identity is only what you choose. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. His identity, the one he chose, is Katsura's friend and ally of Earth. As he says to Darth Vader, his identity is not a general, a spy, or a Renho, it is Elizabeth. He is not a Renho who follows the rule of Darth Vader, no, he is whatever kind of Renho he wants to be, and who he wants to be is Elizabeth, an Earthling. Under their costumes, the Renho look the same as any other people, because they're exactly that, they are just people, and so they are allowed to live like people. The arc is about finding a home, about understanding home is not just a physical place, it is your feelings and connections. And so at the end of the arc, Eren Elizabeth as the new leader of the Renho sets out to find a home for his people, to forge a new identity for their race as not the oppressed but the free. However, Eren Elizabeth chooses to remain in his duck costume and remains a mute. And why is this? Because he makes a vow that he will be the last Renho to be a slave and be a tool. He wears the costume for the sake of his people and their identity, as he chooses how the white costumes of the Renho will now be seen, and so spits in the face of Darth Vader's imposed identity and makes it his own, as the Renho will now be whatever the Renho want to be. He leads them to find a home for themselves, to find their own purpose, but no matter how far he goes, his friends will still be his friends, and this is a lesson he learnt on Earth. And also, do you know why Uno represented the connection between the Renho and Earth? Why Uno was the one thing that tied everyone together, even if their home planets were different? Because Uno is a game where words are not needed, where even silent ducks can play. As long as you can match the numbers and the colours, you're allowed to play. It is a universal game that can be played by anybody in the universe, even those with no home but the void of space. So can we all not agree that the Renho arc is very, very much slept on, and is one of the most thematically rich arcs in the entire series? Now, Dragonia kind of undergoes the same arc as Eren Elizabeth in that he learns the power of leadership from Katsura and he forges a home on Earth. But whereas Eren Elizabeth took those lessons to become a leader in his own right and left Earth for the sake of its people, Dragonia instead used those lessons to support his brothers, the true kings of his planet, because he comes to understand what makes a great leader through Katsura, and so can now see that in his two brothers. As he says himself, he is not Dragonia, king of Okoku, he is Elizabeth of Earth. He stands by his brothers and supports them not as a leader but as simply a brother. And this overall may reflect one of the more core conflicts of the story. As remember the classic opening dialogue from the early episodes? The Yamato came to Earth, outlawed samurais and took away their swords. Remember that this is the goal that Katsura has always been fighting for. It's the freedom of Edo from the Yamato's rule and the puppet shogunate that they put in place. However, I think we can all appreciate the beautiful symbolism in Elizabeth and Yamato being his right-hand duck. Elizabeth and Katsura show that when two different races are fighting together for a just cause, the idea of race no longer matters. Elizabeth declaring himself an Earthling is an incredible moment because it showcases what Katsura fights for. Not the deportation of all the Yamato and the destruction of the shogunate, but of an Edo where both humans and Yamato coexist, as not humans and Yamato, but simply as Earthlings. Dragonia is no king, he is just an Earthling. He is a shining example of Katsura's ideals and of what Gintama puts forward as the right answer to conflict. The connection and understanding is what brings us all, human or alien, together. A monster, a man, a Yato and a god, all unified as simply a family by their shared connection, and the same can be said for Katsura and Elizabeth. Or at least that's what I reckon. It's kinda hard to analyse the duck suit wearing alien when we don't ever know which duck alien we're dealing with, and the fact that Dragonia has like no screen time except for his speech to his brothers, so yeah, that's like the best I got. But if you do have any complaints, remember this was made by Monday Seth, not Tuesday to Sunday Seth, so do with that information what you will. Comment of the week comes from Luke Hunter, and I'm glad it's the best Ali Jr. character breakdown you've ever seen, as honestly, I don't think I've ever seen another Ali Jr. character breakdown. If you're interested in my literary endeavours, then why not check out my books Gang, Fluid Justice and People of Fate Volume 1, available at Amazon.com. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting this channel, then consider pledging to my Patreon, where for as little as £2.75 a month, you can get your name at the end of the video, like Hikari Desu, 7SO, Rinjak9696 and Dewey. So with all that said and done, I've been Seth the Sin, the Deadly Sin of Geek, and I'm signing out. Stay safe, everyone.